everybody, Colton here, and with the overwhelmingly positive reception to Marvel Studios' latest film, Thunderbolts, or I guess I should say the new Avengers, can we finally say Marvel's back? Or maybe the more interesting question would be, did they ever really leave? I mean, it feels like every other project Marvel Studios puts out, we hear Marvel is so back. Shang-Chi, Marvel's back. No Way Home, Marvel's back. WandaVision, Marvel's back. Wakanda Forever, Loki, Miss Marvel, Guardians 3, Deadpool and Wolverine, X-Men 97, Agatha All Along, Daredevil, Marvel's back, Marvel's back, Marvel's back. How many times do they have to be back between their first post-Endgame project in WandaVision and now with Thunderbolts for us to admit that maybe they never really left? But even if, in hindsight, we do determine that maybe we were too hard on the old multiverse saga, that doesn't change the fact that the perception of the MCU has taken a massive hit. And despite Thunderbolts being beloved, I'm afraid that it might be too little too late. Now, a little later, I'm going to be joined by my friends Tommy Bechtold and Mike Lawrence to get their thoughts on the new Avengers and the current state of Marvel Studios. And hey, be sure to check out our Thunderbolts with a Z, sponsored by Shane Tyer's parody shirt. We have one for every member of the team. We've also got our The Thing and John Carpenter's The Thing poster, the America's Ass commemorative stamp, the I Hate You 3000, and many more great Marvel-inspired parody shirts up on our merch store, ScreenCrushMerch.com. Shopping our merch store is the best way to support our channel so that we can keep making videos just like this one. So, don't get me wrong, the MCU certainly isn't the same as it once was.
I ain't as good as I once was.
There have been plenty of clunkers in this saga. I'm looking at you, Secret Invasion. But part of me thinks that no matter how great the post-Endgame era ended up being or not being, and I do think in hindsight it's actually probably better than we've given it credit for, but regardless, the MCU really had nowhere to go but down after reaching the tippity top of the mountain that was Avengers Endgame. I mean, even in the comics, when they reach the end of a huge ground-shaking crossover event, they reset small and build back up to the next one, because that's what makes those crossovers in the comics and in the movies so great. It is those intimate character-based stories that make us care about those big events. Without those small beginnings building blocks, you just, I don't know, you get Dawn of Justice.
Why did you say that name?
And you know, I remember being nervous before Avengers Endgame even came out about where they were going to take this franchise after that finale. I mean, this is my livelihood after all. But there were ways to continue after Endgame and do it successfully. And it all comes down to pacing and story structure. And I'm not talking about the structure of the movies and shows themselves, that's a whole other very important conversation, but I am talking about the structure of the wider story from a per project basis, and the overarching story that you are telling to build to that in-game level event film. Let me explain. So sure, you were going to have to regroup and start small after the Infinity Saga. It was super important for Marvel to build their way back up, but it seemed like they were in a really big hurry, and you would think that they would have known by having already done this successfully the first time around and seeing what happened to the DCEU when they tried to race to the finish, they needed to take their time. Marvel really could have crafted that inevitable descent from the heights of Endgame and prepped for their gradual reascension instead of rolling down the top of the mountain like Chris Farley and Black Sheep.
What in the hell was that all about?
They could have saved this entire franchise from ever having its status questioned by doing one simple thing: not putting the Thunderbolts movie in the wrong f***ing phase.
Stop! Where are you?
Other person, are you okay? You look like you're about to turn into a shadow and kill the whole world.
No, buddy, no traumatic looping rooms today, but like old Bob, I do get anxious from time to time, and when I'm anxious, I have these horrible oral fixation habits like biting my lips. I used to think it was impossible to quit these bad oral fixation habits, and it turns out I was right, and that's because I couldn't just quit, I had to replace, and that's where Fume comes in. No vapor, no nicotine, just natural flavored air that actually satisfies. No stress, no withdrawals, just a simple swap. Fume is an award-winning flavored air device that draws flavor to your mouth, not your lungs, and it is a great way to satisfy your oral fixation habit with non-toxic flavors, and it's safe to use anywhere. I want to show you guys that there is no vapor here. This does not need batteries, and you don't have to charge it. It just has these flavor-based cores that you can personalize with delicious flavors like crisp mint or my favorite, orange vanilla. Also, it just looks cool. I mean, I love love how it's weighted, I love the wood design, and it just feels premium in your hand, and it's also a great fidget tool that makes an incredibly satisfying sound. It is completely safe, and Fume continuously invests in third-party studies to ensure the safety of their products, and it is backed by doctors in the US. Physiology shows that stopping a bad habit cold turkey is very hard on your brain, but Fume works by replacing your hand-to-mouth fixation, calming nervous tension through fidgeting, and distracting you from your bad habit with delicious flavor. Fume has already helped more than 500,000 people build better habits, so try Fume today, and if you order the Journey Pack now using my code ScreenCrush, you'll get a free Fume topper, an awesome accessory to level up your experience. So go to tryfume.com/ScreenCrush or scan the QR code on screen. Now, back to what I was saying. So, despite loving Thunderbolts, my biggest complaint with this movie is that it didn't come out sooner. And I don't mean like literally sooner, this 2025 release date is actually fine with me. Marvel has been putting out way too much stuff, and honestly, they have oversaturated their market. To best serve the story of Thunderbolts, it should have come out before all of these other movies and shows that, good or bad, were nonetheless a distraction. A simple reshuffling of the mere order at which these exact same projects were released could have saved the MCU from ever falling into the category of mid. What made the MCU so great was its dedication to putting characters first, and Thunderbolts has done that brilliantly. Bucky, a character who's been in this franchise since Phase 1, is now in a leadership position, and they look up to him, and he represents the kind of hero's journey that they are all longing for, breaking from your dark and heinous past and successfully being perceived as a hero by the public, even winning a congressional seat. Granted, it's not hard for a criminal to get into Congress, but you get my point. Yelena, John Walker, Alexei, Ava, Bob, they all have darker halves that, for most of them, were explored in previous projects, telling a linear story that general audiences could follow project to project had Marvel stayed focused. So, in case you haven't been keeping up, Thunderbolts is the final film of Phase 5, but what I'm saying is it should have been the capper to Phase 4, and I don't mean that in like an arbitrary way. That labeling of the phases isn't really what matters, but the order in which you tell your overarching story in an interconnected franchise does matter a lot. So again, I say this movie belongs in Phase 4. You know Phase 4, the phase where all of the characters in this movie were being set up for a desperately wanted and needed team-up movie that we as MCU fans had come to expect and look forward to. But for some reason, Marvel decided early on that it would be a good idea to make a whole other phase of unrelated, sporadic, disconnected projects in between this movie and the projects that were directly setting it up. I mean, seriously, look back at the trajectory we were on. Yelena, Alexei, Valentina, John Walker, Bucky, and even Taskmaster were all set up years ago in Phase 4 within about a 2-year span, and Ava Starr's Ghost was introduced at the tail end of the Infinity Saga with Ant-Man and the Wasp. We were going strong. We had post-credit scenes and crossovers happening that were leading us straight into the Thunderbolts. Sure, there was some other unrelated stuff coming out as well. We had No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Love and Thunder. My god, that is a lot of stuff. But that's fine. Those can stay. I don't care. I just want to know why in God's name would they do all of this setup, all of this character development, all of these post-credit scene teases for this Thunderbolts team-up movie just to have them sit on a shelf for years while they crank out a whole other phase in between that features none of the Thunderbolts. Okay, Bucky was in Brave New World for like a minute, but seriously, look back at Phase 5, the phase that Thunderbolts is the capper to. None of these characters have had anything to do this entire phase. We haven't seen any of them since like 2022, and that span of time would be unfortunate yet forgivable had we not been given like 15 other projects in between. Marvel has released 5 movies and 11 seasons of television since we last saw any of these characters or heard a damn thing about any of their stories. This is my job, and even I was having trouble remembering what all they had set up with Valentina and the crossover teases with these characters that they were setting up what feels like it was years years ago. This would be like if back in Phase 1, Marvel made Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America, and Thor, and then paused to make 15 other unrelated things before making the Avengers. I mean, it is criminal, the disservice that was done here to these characters and the story that was put on hold so that they could crank out all of this unrelated content. Black Widow, Hawkeye, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Wakanda Forever were weaving the thread of this Valentina Allegra character in a villainous Nick Fury type role, placing this team of unlikely heroes together. And then that all kind of just stopped and was forgotten about. And you guys know how there are like those recuts of like different movies and TV series that make the project way better? Like Topher Grace, he famously recut the prequels into a more cohesive story. There's a great recut of the Kenobi series that actually makes it watchable. I feel like I'm picking on Star Wars, sorry.
It's not disrespect, Master, it's the truth.
Anyway, I'm beginning to wonder if we did like a fan recut of the multiverse saga's phases and the release order of these various projects, would the story and the overall reception become better? And I think it's pretty undeniable that it would. Now, here in a second, I want to give my verdict on whether or not Thunderbolts was to save the MCU. But first, I want to hear from my friends Tommy Bechtold and Mike Lawrence to get their thoughts on Thunderbolts and the impact that this movie will have on the greater MCU. Alright, well, those are just my thoughts. Now I want to get the thoughts of Tommy Bechtold and Mike Lawrence. Guys, I really enjoyed this movie despite my complaints with when it is being released and the overall multiverse saga. Mike, what were your thoughts on Thunderbolts / New Avengers?
/ the most decent James Gunn movie James Gunn didn't direct. It is hard not to. I even saw the director bring up. It is hard not to compare this to Suicide Squad and I think it is much better than the 2016. I think it pales in comparison to James Gunn's 2021, and it even has that Guardians feel of the scrappy people that come together. We shouldn't be a team, but we're a team. So I liked it. I think what saves it is the performances. I think Pugh is fantastic.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Not as good as her uncle Pepe Le, but she's awesome. Harbor, again, Ghost doesn't exist when Harbor's on screen because he's eating all the scenery she could phase through. He
put it on the poster.
He's having a blast. Viola Davis is better than Julia Louis-Dreyfus in this exact same role, but she's fun. I just think, the Void stuff, like that made me feel a little bit like Enchantress, that the most powerful member of your team is also the villain of your team. But it was well done, and I thought that actor, Bill Pullman's son, did a good job. My big thing about this movie, and I haven't seen anyone else say this, is the whole thing they keep mentioning is we're all killers, right? Or as Ned Flanders would say, we're all murdiddly-erdlers. But all of the Avengers are killers. Iron Man had so many, kills in that first movie, let alone all the people that died because of his arms deals. Thor has been battling for thousands of years. Hulk wakes up on dead people. Black Widow's killed as much, if not more, than Yelena. Cap's a soldier. And Hawkeye, even before he was Ronin, he was a soldier. So this idea that the original Avengers are these pure, nice characters, and these are the scumbags who can't get over the murders they've had. It's like, no, you guys are amateurs next to the Avengers in terms of the amount of people you've killed. So the movie in that sense is a false premise to me.
Mike, you're not watching enough ScreenCrush. I just said this in yesterday's video. No, but really, I completely agree with you. I was making the point that I think this whole beef they're setting up between Sam and Bucky is, I think we're probably going to hear Sam say something insensitive like, the new Avengers cannot be a team of killers. And then I did a little bit of a fan fiction moment where I'm like, Bucky's going to say, man, Tony was a killer, Hulk's a killer, Thor's a killer, Black Widow went to the same Red Room, Steve and I did stuff we weren't proud of when we were in the military. I think you're making a fantastic point there.
And Carol almost killed the franchise.
She's a cinematic universe destroyer. Yeah. So
Tommy, and also Mike, to your point about Florence Pugh, that where has she been? They have a powerhouse here that could have totally carried this franchise post Endgame.
She was in The Rock's WWE movie, Fighting with My Family.
Yeah,
she was in Don't Worry, Darling.
They just
and
benched her.
Little Women.
Right.
Yeah, she makes this movie.
I completely agree. Yeah, Tommy, what did you think of Thunderbolts, New Avengers?
Yeah, I echo a lot of these sentiments. I mean, I think this movie kind of, is a long-awaited answer to that question, right? And that's kind of what a lot of the shortcomings of the MCU have been, is we've introduced and not followed up. So we're finally getting that follow-up. I very much enjoyed this movie, as I've said on other videos, but I think fundamentally they kill off probably the most dangerous person, which would be Taskmaster, immediately. Right, she's the one that was kind of she probably was the one that was continuing to do the most bad, and they were like, all right, well, we'll give her one line in a death. At least they let her take her Tony Starkified mask off for a second, so Olga Kurylenko gets 1 second of actual screen time before the stunt double went in and did the heavy lifting. But
you've talked about this movie that much that you can pronounce that actress's name correctly.
Listen, I'm just a big Kurylenko head. What can I say?
You haven't seen Tommy's tattoo.
I'm a member of an oligarchy.
He can master all the tasks.
It's topical. It's hot. The kids are loving it. Everyone loves my tattoos. I'm a big fan. I thought this movie was great. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, I think, is so over the top as Vale, but it works because it makes the unbelievable things she does slightly more believable, because the character is so outrageous. In the end, luring them into the press conference is to me, it's aren't they all a little smarter than that to follow someone through a hole in the fence? It's no, they're so blinded by how wrong this woman has been to them. They're like, get her, and then they just end up having to smile at a press conference. So we've all been there.
Well, you both make just such great points about this great cast and what they did with this movie, and it just makes me all the more angry that they pretty much kneecapped this film by not delaying it or anything. They always had the plan to release it at the end of Phase 5. They always had the plan to do all of this other shit before they got to Thunderbolts, and I don't know why. Even as somebody who it's my job to talk about this stuff, I was struggling to remember. I was like, okay, and what happened in the post-credit scene of Black Widow? And then she recruited Walker, in Captain America and Winter Soldier, right? And then, there was something in Hawkeye with Yelena. It just, they completely abandoned that storyline, it feels like. And I think they're going to come to regret that.
I think you have to look at the movies the way that you look at the comics, more so in the sense that when a new writer takes over, they play with the stuff they like and they ignore the stuff they don't.
Yeah.
This illusion that comics have been so connected and faithful to continuity is not true.
Yeah.
People have been putting their babies over other people's babies for years in comics. And it's you look at this movie, right? And like I said, because of the performances and stuff like that, I was able to enjoy it. If I look at those things, if I ask myself, where is S.H.I.E.L.D.? If I ask myself, well, who is the president now that Ross isn't there, right? I can just keep doing that.
Yeah.
And I don't think these movies weren't made to tell the most complex story ever. These movies were made to make money.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if you're entertained, that's what matters. I mean, I think when we get so in our heads about all of that stuff, they've had so many political figures and liaisons, right? Where's Maria Hill? We know Nick Fury's in space, but there's all these other politicians and stuff, and if you really look deep into it, then none of it makes sense.
Yeah. I think Maria Hill's dead.
I have to just to enjoy it for what it is, I think. And and I think this movie does a good job of that at times. Even though I do have that, this does feel like the Suicide Squad bias, I was able to look past that when I'm in the theater watching the movie.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Tommy, What do you think about that? Am I being too hard on the fact that they put this movie out, what I would say, like, way, way too late, and I don't know why that was ever the plan? Or do you think that general audiences can they keep up with it all? I just feel like Marvel has put out just way, way, way too much stuff to tell this cohesive story.
I think that's exactly it. Yeah. That's exactly it. It's impossible to put out all of this content with all of these different characters and then keep them kind of in the conversation continuously. Like Shang-Chi is just like been gone for half a decade now. We're like, well, we know that Simu Liu luckily is, for better or for worse, kind of ubiquitous in the Hollywood conversation. He was in the Barbie movie, so we remember that actor. But like, other than that, it's kind of like, well, now we have the announcement that he's going to be in Doomsday, but so we know that we're getting him then, right? Like that's, other than that, we're kind of like, that entire subset of the MCU has been completely forgotten. So yeah, I don't think what you're saying is unjustified at all. I think it's just kind of, this is, I hesitate to make a sports analogy, but
I
it's
won't
like,
get it,
We'll
but go ahead.
This will go over. This will generate a lot of hatred. But it's like when teams overspend on their rosters and they go over the salary cap, they then have a few years where they have to use those players, or they have to fill in the gaps, and they end up not being able to put out as good of a product for the following years. It feels to me like Marvel had a problem where they introduced all of these projects and they weren't all as interconnected as the earlier phases, and now they have to play with these pieces, but they're like, oh, this guy who we haven't seen in 3 Marvel projects is suddenly coming back, and he's going to get serious reps on this team. You're going to have to remember what a contributor he was to the team 4 years ago. And it's hard for a viewer when we have so much content now outside of just the MCU. I mean, on Disney Plus alone, there's Star Wars, there's Marvel, there's Disney Studios, there's anything that goes on Hulu or FX. Like, they are competing for brain space with 10x what people had to compete with even a decade ago. So it really is a tough challenge. And I think it feels to us who spend so much time focusing on it, if even we are struggling with the placement of the project, like, imagine what the average MCU viewer is struggling with that just kind of goes and sees these movies recreationally.
And there's the retcon, too, that, everything from Iron Man to Endgame was perfect, and it wasn't.
Sure, of course.
I'm just saying, there was a lot of filler. We didn't love all those movies, Thor 2.
No, Iron Man 2 was generally kind of reviled by Marvel fans.
Yeah, even, it's like when I started doing a watch-along with my family around the time of COVID, I was like, yeah, we could skip Incredible Hulk. we don't have to do this or do that.
Well, you won't recognize the Hulk anyway if you watch it.
Sure.
Yeah. Wait, that's a different guy.
And then Brave New World comes out, and you have to know so much about the Incredible Hulk.
So much.
And to bring up Brave New World in comparison to this, if you're asking me if this came out too late, I would say yes, in the sense that this should have come out at first instead of Brave New World, because I think the momentum would have been much stronger. I think Brave New World felt more like a TV show than a movie.
Yes.
And I think it lowered the standard of... Then there's things in that I like. I love this whole subplot with Isaiah. I say subplot because it does get pushed back, but I liked Sam and Isaiah's relationship in that movie. There are things I like in there. But at the end of the day, when the dud comes out first... Yeah. And then this has to follow it. I think it kind of tarnishes it a little bit.
Well, they completely kneecapped Brave New World with Falcon and Winter Soldier, I think, because Falcon and Winter Soldier was what the story of the first Sam Wilson Captain America movie should have been. But instead, they did the TV show first. Mike, you took the words right out of my mouth regarding the Infinity Saga. There were plenty of clunkers in the Infinity Saga, and so I think I'd be interested to see if you took the Infinity Saga and the Multiverse Saga and you put, you separated the good ones and the bad ones. I wonder if there's an equation that could be had that says, look, in terms of ratios, in terms of percentages, there's the same percentage of shit content in the Multiverse Saga as there is the Infinity Saga. The Multiverse Saga is just way bigger. So I think you make a really good point there.
But the thing is, like, and I've done stand up for almost 20 years. The thing in entertainment, like especially in live performance, your opener and your closer have to be very strong. And Iron Man was a phenomenal opener, and Endgame was a great closer, and people remember what they first saw and what they left on. And if there was enough decent stuff in between, then it was wonderful. And now we're trying to judge all this new stuff based on that. And I think in some ways it's unfair to the new stuff. I think you really do have to judge these things based on a case-by-case basis. No offense to ScreenCrush and its entire identity in the last year or so, but this idea of, is the MCU, ruined? Can this movie save the MCU? It's just clickbait. Because it's like, let's just judge. Sorry about your business model, but let's just judge.
I just work here.
I know. Ryan just has a garret. I love Ryan, but like,
Kill switch.
no, but it's interesting when I read the comments. People will say, and I agree with these specific YouTube comments, not the ones that say I'm an unfunny piece of garbage. Although I do agree with those too. But the ones that say, like, can we stop judging? Like, can we? Everything's doom and gloom, or this is the best thing ever. Like, this is a very good movie. It is not a phenomenal movie. It is not a horrible movie. It's a very good movie. Yeah. And sometimes that's enough.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, it used to be, and I think like just to, I think that kind of what has happened is almost more so kind of citizen reviewers have started to make every movie all or nothing.
Yes.
Like it's the discourse online has totally become like, is this movie the death knell of this franchise, or is this movie the, donated kidney that's going to resuscitate this like dying franchise? And it's like every single piece of online discourse outside of even YouTube channels. I mean, like you could have just a simple tweet being like, wow, Thunderbolts was really great, MCU is back in form, and it will preside, like underneath the comment section of the tweet will be people responding to it being like, MCU's been dead for 10 years, these things were bad, or MCU never died, and how dare you say that, and everything. Basically, to get engagement now on tweets, on Instagram posts, on anything, you have to put stakes to it. Like it needs to have this like, and I do understand that, but it gets exhausting.
Well, yeah, we're no longer writers; we're the newsies.
Right.
Read all about it. Extra, MCU dead.
And we are the kings of New York, Mike. I've always said that.
And I want to go to Santa Fe.
Well,
with our boy Christian Bale.
You make a good.
Anyway,
you both make a good point that it makes it hard to have an honest conversation. Like I can't tell you the amount of times that I have been called a Marvel, Disney hater.
Yes.
I give a negative review of every single thing that Marvel puts out. Oh, shocker, Colton said something negative about Marvel. And then I get the exact same amount of comments saying the exact opposite thing. I'm a shill. All I do is praise Marvel. I'm like, people just hear what they want to hear, I think, but you make a good point. Mike, when we were hopping on, waiting for Tommy, who was late as usual, and he needs to get back to work here soon.
I do have to get back. My break is almost up, Colton. You're going to get me fired from this place.
Mike, you weren't too happy
about
works
for the Detroit Tigers.
I'm the manager.
Yeah, he's the George Costanza of comic book commentary.
He was asleep under his desk. But you weren't too happy about the title change. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I didn't like the title change because one, I think it was too early and it reeks of corporate desperation.
So you mean the reveal?
Yes.
Like after the first weekend. Okay.
The reveal, yeah. I mean, look, like this movie did decently. Percentage-wise, it did about as well as Sinners, but did not get any of the criticism Sinners got. By the way, go see Sinners.
Oh, Sinners is phenomenal. Yeah.
But that movie, like, I think overperformed for what it was and got these negative criticisms, and this movie I think underperformed a little bit, and
yes,
has got nothing but positives. But I think based on the way Marvel is acting, it seems like they didn't think it did that well, because I don't think you change the name of your movie 3 days in if you're super confident about how it's doing. And I also think that this is just an overall thought, and this is something I think that they used to do really well that they don't anymore. And maybe it is more part of the culture and the way things are now. But I really believe that spoilers, when you announce things and you just give everything away, I don't think we should know that Doctor Doom is even coming yet, let alone who's playing him, let alone every actor that's in Doomsday. The fact that they announced actors from this movie in Doomsday and in the FF, that I know that there's no stakes in this movie or that movie because of that. But I also think, like the Discovery, we got to see Nick Fury. We got to see that version of Thanos at the end of Avengers. That poor actor who thought he's like, I'm going to be the next big villain.
I'm Thanos.
Yeah.
You're not.
Hear me roar. Yeah.
He's like, honey, open your copy of Iron Man 55. That's my first appearance. But the idea that we now leak everything and that the companies are doing it, like that's the worst thing. It used to be like, hey, fans don't spoil things. Like, I think the reveal of the new Avengers in this movie is an important plot point, and it's an important character moment. It is Contessa's defining moment in this movie. Because the whole time you're thinking, oh man, she's done. Everyone's trying to get her, and they finally prove she's corrupt. And then that moment of the press conference and everything, that is a really big part of this film.
Yeah.
And now you've taken the wind out of those sails.
Not to mention they lifted their own gag from Falcon and Winter Soldiers, which ends on a title card change to Captain America and Winter Soldier. It's literally the same thing they did for that. And they're like, look, right? It's like movies can change, guys. They can change their title. I thought the revelations of the Doomsday casting announcements really hurt this movie, because anyone going in looking, I guess they would have been disappointed with the film, but like it took away any suspense of this being a Suicide Squad style movie. I mean, like they basically told us Taskmaster was dead with the trailers. But then once we saw that all of these actors are going to be in Doomsday, it's like, well, they're not dying because Marvel won't commit to variants. Like, even though this is a multiverse saga, it's like.
Did you guys see that shot in the trailer where they're all in Avengers Tower, and for the trailer they like put Taskmaster in? They like.
No,
That's great.
I didn't even notice that. But it's like, it is like, it'll be interesting to see in the years to come how that role changed, because in early promotion, she's just in the team where she's in the bullet thing where they're all laying on the bullets. Her name is in the promos. And by the end of it, the trailer's listing the 5 names and her name's not there. You're like, oh, that can't be good. That could be good.
And I think a top 5 bungling of a great comic book character to the screen. And that's what's interesting too, when fans like complain about gender and everything. It is not the gender thing that is the issue here. It's the character. Taskmaster is really funny. Taskmaster can go joke for joke with Deadpool. Yeah. Taskmaster is like one of my favorite characters in the Marvel comics, because he's basically like yeah, I kind of just do this for money and I don't give a shit. Like, that aspect of the character is completely gone. Yeah, and even like, I didn't love the end credits sequence in this movie because, I mean, I know I already saw the Doomsday announcement, but now I especially know the Fantastic Four is fine.
Right.
Yeah,
and I like the illusion of thinking they're in peril, even if they're not.
Yeah, I don't know that their universe is fine, though. I don't know.
No.
How amazing would it be, though, if that ship lands?
All of their trinkets at home are gone.
Dude, if that ship lands and only Herbie gets out, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, guys, this was a really great conversation. You two are two of my faves. Tommy, Mike, thank you so much for joining me. And now I want to share with everybody my thoughts, my verdict on whether or not, and I'm playing into Mike's entire criticism here, can the new Avengers Save the MCU. Okay, so for me, what made the MCU great was two things. Each movie was its own, well-made, well-crafted story that could stand on its own, but it also tied into an episodic, grander story that was carefully crafted by Kevin Feige, essentially acting as a showrunner but for a cinematic universe. But that was lost in the multiverse saga, and it feels like they just threw a bunch of shit against the wall hoping that it would stick, and I think that that could be responsible for the MCU being in the volatile state that it is in. I mean, if you look back at the multiverse saga and all of its projects and you put each one into a thumbs up or thumbs down category, I don't know about you guys, but for me, most of them are going to go in that thumbs up side. The only truly awful project for me in this saga, I think, was Secret Invasion, and a lot of the projects in this saga were at that same level of greatness that we would expect out of the Infinity Saga. And sure, there were more projects this saga that are more in the vein of like an Iron Man 2 or a Thor the Dark World, not bad, but not great, but they're still better than a lot of the slop that usually hits our screens. And I think had these stories simply been told in a cohesive order that didn't feel so haphazard and disjointed, it would have better served the saga as a whole, and it would have set Thunderbolts up to be an even more successful movie. But having said all of that, the fans and the general audiences do seem to be forgiving of these missteps, and they are very happy with Thunderbolts, me included, and very excited for the Fantastic Four and Avengers Doomsday. So let me know your thoughts on all of this down in the comments below, or you can find me on our Discord, link in the description. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe, smash that bell so you get notified every time we upload a new video. For ScreenCrush, I'm Colton Ogburn.